In 1961, on July the 12th, a real-life superhero came to Manchester. And that's something that pops up again and again. It's an individual who really was somebody who'd achieved something outside this world. And it's somebody who was so unique in his achievement, unequaled by anybody. Although, by the time Gagarin came here, the Americans had also got somebody in space, but not into Earth orbit. If you were to draw up a table of Gagarin's flight, how long he's been in space, and all the 500, and you sorted them in terms of who's been in space the longest, Gagarin would come at the bottom of the list. He was in space, where his flight lasted just under 2 hours. And it takes about 45 minutes to do one Earth orbit. So it's 90 minutes, beg your pardon. And because he's accelerating from the Earth's surface and then decelerating on his parachute, he was actually in space for around an hour. And one thing that was quite clear in the press leading up to his arrival was there was a very obvious and strong disconnect between what the politicians in the UK, Harold Macmillan was the Prime Minister at the time, what they wanted to do. They wanted this to be a very low-key affair, didn't really give him the attention that perhaps they would have liked to, mainly because they knew it was very much a political affair and wanted to mitigate the propaganda element of his visit, but also because even then the special relationship between America and Britain was in place. And by celebrating, or appearing to celebrate, the achievement of the Soviets meant highlighting the failures of our friends, the Americans. The first commercial flights that ever took place, or I should say scheduled flights in the UK, took off from Hough End to Blackpool via Southport, and you could get a return ticket for 9 shillings or 9 guineas. 9 guineas, and 5 guineas each way. But John Alcock, like Gagarin, shared a very similar fate. They were trying new flying machines and they died in that act. John Alcock died in the same year after he did this flight, which I'll tell you about, this very first transatlantic flight in a moment. And that was 1919. And Yuri Gagarin died 7 years after his visit here, whilst undertaking further training for his future space missions. But the thing about Gagarin, about John Alcock, is unique to this area, is that the aircraft that you see on the right is the aircraft, twin-engine aircraft, that they together used to fly from America to Ireland, a place called Clifton, in June 1919. So this is the very first summer after the end of the war, and nobody's done this before, and they think they can do it, take off, they hit straight away some low mist, and then overnight, as they're flying over the Atlantic, snowstorms. In the snowstorm, the storm rages throughout the night, and it clogs up the air intake to the engines. And if the engines don't get air, they stop. If the engines stop, they have to ditch. So with John Alcock at the controls, Brown did a bit of wing walking to clear the snow out of the engine intakes, in the snow, in the dark, on both sides of the aircraft, both engines, 4 times. And how they actually managed to survive this is amazing. And yet, you know, if you ask them who was the very first person who went across the Atlantic, they don't mention them. So why did Gagarin come to Manchester? He was invited. And he was invited by the Amalgamated Union of Foundry Workers. And it's a union that doesn't exist now. And it's something that started in June 1809 in a pub in Bolton. The headquarters for that union was at Brooks Bar, and I'll show you a picture of what it looks like in a moment. But when Gagarin came, he went to, first from the airfield, from Ringway Airport, in his open-top Bentley. He got a nice warm Manchester welcome. He was soaked. The mayor was sitting next to him with his regalia, and he was pretty much soaked as well. But people lined the streets. That was the amazing thing. And after the headquarters of the union, he went to Metropolitan Vickers. He had a walk round. He visited the union office, Metropolitan Vickers, but his last place of visit was the town hall. And I'm delighted to say that Joyce, who was there at the time, is here today.
We were all dashing around moving furniture, you know, to clear the room. And he did actually shake hands with us, but never spoke to us, you know, just shook hands. But he had such a lovely way with him, you know. He seemed so friendly, really, you know, smile for everyone. Pouring with rain, you know, typical Manchester wet day, you know. But we were surprised how many people turned out, you know. Yeah, so that's was worth keeping. Yeah.
And you did get to shake hands with him?
Yes, yeah, but that was something. I always remember.
She's not washed it since.
No. Really, that you actually saw him and saw him very clearly, you know. I do treasure the memory. I do very much.
When he was in Manchester, he arrived at 10 o'clock at the airport, and back at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon he was back there again, flew back to London. It is from a guy called Fred Garner, who, as a private individual, went out with this cine film from Hayward, got 3 buses to get to Ringway, and he filmed this through the fence. That's all you'll see. So if you see the film on Northwest Film Archives, it's from this point onwards. What you've seen up until now is something that's come from elsewhere. Feel free to say that louder.
Does everybody know where that is? Yes.
The greatest honour possible to be an honorary member of your union.
One of her recollections is that she remembers his smile, and the Russian ambassador I was talking to during last year's events was telling me that. It's an amazing individual, a terrific achievement, and great that he came to Manchester. Thank you very much for your time.